Hello, welcome to my presentation on Tax-Aide program changes for 2021. COVID-19 has had a huge impact on the Tax-Aide program around the country and here in Massachusetts as well. There is, for this coming tax season, there is a lot of uncertainty as far as sites that may or may not open, the times, the dates at which various sites will open, because the COVID positivity rate in Massachusetts is climbing as of this date, January 10th, 2021. Because the rate is still climbing, that's what introduces even more uncertainty as far as what the Tax-Aide program is going to do as far as opening dates. So until the positivity rate starts to come down, we're probably not going to be able to open sites, and we're hoping that positivity rate will round the corner in the not too distant future so that we can get back to what we do most for our seniors. There are various approved service delivery models that the AARP has already approved. Many of them are virtual models, meaning that the tax preparation will actually be done from various places, could possibly be from a counselor's home or from a site other than the site where the taxpayer actually came to have their documents dropped off or have the documents scanned. So there are various ways that a taxpayer's tax return can actually be prepared that have been pre-approved. However, now we have this situation with COVID that introduces another factor that may delay the whole process. Even though we know we have a plan as far as how to deliver the service, the service really can't be delivered if there's a safety issue resulting from an extremely high level of infection in the community. So we do want to follow the CDC guidelines. We are going to strictly enforce those guidelines, so we're going to keep our environment as safe as we possibly can. There are many different models, as I said, that the AARP has approved that are called virtual models or remote models, and we'll talk about the one we're using here in Marshfield in just a minute. Now, these virtual models, anytime that a taxpayer comes to have their documents scanned and they're basically going to leave those electronic images with us of their extremely personal information, there is an IRS form 14446, which is a three-page form that has to be signed by the taxpayer or taxpayers. So if it's a married couple, both must sign this form, and this form must be signed by both parties or by the individual party if that's the case. It must be signed prior to us doing absolutely anything for them. So when they come to the site, if that form is not signed, it must be signed at that time. Otherwise, we cannot proceed. There are lots of other forms, of course, that are in their intake package, their intake booklet, and those forms generally are optional, so they can either sign or not sign those forms. But this one in particular must be signed before we can begin. So let's get into a little more depth about what virtual tax preparation is. Taxpayers will request the service either online at the Tax-Aide webpage or by booking an appointment locally as they've always done in the past. Each district will have something called a district virtual return coordinator. That person would be responsible for assigning tax preparation to a particular site within the district. Each site then will have what's called a site virtual coordinator, an SVRC, responsible for assigning tax preparation to a specific preparer group. And the sites that will be participating in this process will set up these groups, usually 3 or 4 counselors, one of which may be a quality reviewer, And then within that group, the tax return will be prepared, and eventually the taxpayer will come back to that site to pick up their copies and to sign the Form 8879. Let's look at an example of one of these virtual models, the one that we're using in Marshfield, which is a two-visit model. So what's going to happen is that Marshfield Senior Center is designated as an intake site. So an intake site would imply that the taxpayers are going to come in and be interviewed and give us their materials. So it's an intake site. So the preparation isn't actually going to be done at the Marshfield Senior Center. Taxpayer brings their documents in along with their completed intake booklet, hopefully completed, and brings all that material into us, places it on a table distant from anybody, and then somebody will approach that table, pick up those documents, and then begin working with them. A certified counselor will examine the material and then will interview the taxpayer from a safe distance. We're talking about probably using Google Meet between two laptops, having the taxpayer sit at one laptop and having the counselor at another, and interview them that way. We're hoping that for people that have hearing difficulties, that approach may be better than trying to interview them from 6 or 10 feet away. Having that kind of distance between people, I think, and the counselors having to raise their voices, which raises safety issues as well. So we haven't tested this yet, but we're hoping that this will work. Counselor scans the relevant documents to a secure Google Drive folder. That is, we have scanners that we are able to use to scan the documents to turn them into electronic versions. Taxpayer then leaves the building with their paper documents, the same documents that they brought to us. We don't keep anything as far as paper. We'll only have electronic documents. And then they are told that they will receive a call from a quality review counselor within the next few days. The client, by the quality review counselor, will then schedule the client for a return visit after explaining their tax return to them, telling them what their refund is or their balance due, and going through the basics of how those numbers came to be. They will be scheduled for a return appointment to come back to the site in order to sign Form 8879 and to get their paper copies. And that's basically how the process will work in Marshfield. And as I said before, other sites will do other things possibly, but there are a number of models that have been approved. So this is the model in Marshfield. So let's talk about the virtual training model. There is no classroom training in 2021 for obvious reasons. COVID has certainly impacted that. We usually deliver our training in a classroom, and this year we're doing it differently. So this is the virtual training model. It's what we've used for our new counselor trainees this year, and we started this back in October. It's a supervised self-study model for the new trainees. So the AARP Tax-Aide people developed a very nice self-study program that takes about 40 hours or so to complete. And that self-study program has been used by the new trainees, and the new trainees have been supervised by a mentor. So I have, for instance, 3 trainees that I mentor, and other instructors as well have a set of trainees that they've been mentoring since October. So that has worked pretty well. I think the supervision part of it has made the difference. We self-study in the past has been hit and miss. It has worked well for some trainees, not very well for others. But with the mentorship and the supervision, at least they know somebody's watching, somebody's paying attention. I've actually been quizzing my trainees to see what they've retained, and I'm very impressed with how well they've done. Google Meet is now the primary vehicle that we use for live training at the district level. So that is, we're not using Zoom. Zoom apparently has had some security issues, and that's the reason why we've gone with Google Meet. Plus, Google Meet fits into the family of Google products that we use because we're now on the Google Chromebook platform for preparing taxes. So the more Google products we have at our disposal, the better, because they obviously work the best within that Google platform. AARP Volunteer Portal, primary vehicle for national training. So the Volunteer Portal has been used quite heavily by the national people to develop programs for training volunteers, and they've really expanded that quite a bit in 2021. So we'll be getting more into that. We also have YouTube videos provided by selected topic coverage. We've developed a bunch of these videos for District 6. As a matter of fact, this recording will probably be on that list of videos that can be watched later, because we do have some volunteers that are unable to attend either one of our sessions, so we're making these videos available for them. But also there are YouTube videos that are available at the national level, and those can be accessed through the portal as well. There's a list of them, and they bring you to a YouTube channel that the AARP Tax-Aide people have developed from a national perspective. So there are lots of videos, and the AARP Foundation Tax-Aide training people have certainly understood the need to have these videos for 2021 because of the inability to do the classroom training. So new for 2021, we have policy and procedure training, which the AARP Foundation wants us all to be exposed to, so that we understand what's in their policy and procedures manual, and so they've made it a required thing that everyone has to do. So at the AARP Volunteer Portal, you have a training tab. So when you go into your account on the AARP Volunteer Portal, under the training tab, you will find a variety of videos. Well, actually, I don't know if you'd actually call them videos. They're training modules that are very, actually well done, very professionally developed, and are interactive so that you're involved during the training process, and it keeps them more interesting than it would be if you were just reading through material. So there are 4 that will appear there. Now, you may not, when you go into the training tab, you may not actually see all of these, but if you go up above in the black area of the screen, there's something called the content library, and in the content library you will find all of the training videos that they've developed. And these are the 4 here on our slide, professionally developed modules that we either recommend or are required for District 6 counselors. Introduction to Tax-Aide, I think, provides some basic information that everybody should know about the Tax-Aide organization, about its history, and what our objectives are. So that's good for everybody to know. Tax-Aide policy and procedures, of course, is the one that I referred to as being required now for every Tax-Aide volunteer. Security Essentials is required for District 6 counselors. Security Essentials is an extremely important topic because data security is becoming more and more of an issue, and security is something that we all have to be very aware of so that we do all of the right things to protect our taxpayers' information. Tax-Aide technology, because we are being more and more technology driven, especially now that we're on the Chromebook platform, you really should be aware of the technology and the various do's and don'ts. So those are the four that we recommend that you participate in so that you can get up to speed. So now in 2021, we have a totally Chromebook environment. We didn't have that last year. We had a mixture of site-provided computers, personal computers, and Chromebooks. This year, strictly Chromebooks. No personal computers, no site-provided computers are allowable. These Chromebooks provide a strictly controlled environment, which is centrally managed. So the Chromebook environment throughout the United States is controlled by one central Tax-Aide administrator. Much better for taxpayer data security. So everyone, I think, feels more comfortable that the average taxpayer's data is being safely kept and being destroyed when we're done with it. Personal computers no longer allowed for, we already talked about that, for production tax returns. However, personal computers are still allowed for practice lab and for administrative activities. So it's really only for preparing returns during the actual tax season that the Chromebooks are absolutely required. Some of these other things can be done in personal computers. Preparing returns at home or from some other remote location. So any counselor that is interested in participating in this, if they're working from a site that's set up as a virtual prepare site, the counselor must first be approved by their local and district coordinator. Data security in this situation is, of course, the primary objective, so that we're not jeopardizing any taxpayers' information. A wired Ethernet is probably the most secure and least costly way to get the job done if you're working from home. So if you have the ability to run an Ethernet cable from your router, your Wi-Fi router, which in the back they generally have these RJ45 ports that look like telephone jacks, but they're a little bit bigger. If you have those ports in the back of your router, you can run a cable from there to your desk, wherever. If you happen to have a desk that's, let's say, within 20-25 feet of the router, you could run one of these cables. You will need, of course, an Ethernet cable and an adapter. So these adapters are fairly cost-effective. They're inexpensive. They're probably around $4 or $5 at the most, and they are available to be ordered. I don't know how quickly we could get them, so you want to let your local coordinator know that you need one of these adapters if you want to go that route. Wi-Fi router at home. If you just want to use your existing Wi-Fi router, it has to conform to Section 8.10.4 of the Policy and Procedures Manual. So in that section, it's described various settings that the Wi-Fi router needs to have changed, and in many cases, the average homeowner probably is not technical enough to make those changes, but there are some volunteers that are retired technicians that might have no problem making those changes in their router. And also you have the capability of calling Xfinity or whoever your provider is. You could probably have them come and make the changes for you, probably at a cost. So the third choice is a secondary travel router. We have a couple, the TP-Link WR802 and WR902. Both of these travel routers are very popular for one thing, but also very useful. They have been used over the last few years, particularly in hotel rooms. So people that are staying overnight at a hotel oftentimes want to get on the internet, so they have the ability to connect from their hotel room normally into a wide open, unsecured network. And if people wanted to do banking from their hotel room or something like that, of course they don't want to be on an unsecured network. So If you plug one of these little routers into an Ethernet port that happens to be in your hotel room, you now have a very secure little subnet all of your own that you can connect to and be able to do banking or whatever you need to do without having to worry about the security. So these routers are fairly inexpensive and can be obtained. They can probably not be obtained very quickly, though. So if you're interested in doing that, having one of these set up in your house, you would need to let your local coordinator know that you need one of these routers, and your local coordinator could probably make arrangements to get one for you. So that's a little bit about preparing returns at home and the kinds of things that you need to consider if you're thinking about doing that. And that's about it as far as the changes to the Tax-Aide program. So up and coming are the tax law changes, and that's a separate module. So thank you for tuning in.